Hello, everybody. A few weeks ago, I got an email from the TEDx committee here at NYU Shanghai, and I have to say, I was very excited. I was excited for a couple of reasons. One, I've watched a lot of TED Talks, like many of you. I also use TED Talks in my class, but I've never given a TED Talk, and I was excited to see what it's like from the other side. So the other reason I was excited is because I wanted to find out what I would talk about, because I had no idea. I don't know if you guys walk around with your TED Talk in your head ready for you if you get asked, but I didn't, so I didn't know what I would talk about. So as I was thinking about things that I had done in my life and experiences I had had and talking with friends and talking with my family, I had this realization. And I told it to my wife. I said, you know, looking at my life and things that I've done, I've realized that I don't really plan things, or I don't really go try to do things. Things just kind of happen to me, and I respond in kind. And my wife looked at me and she said, I don't know if that's what they want in a TED Talk. But as Yilin said, the theme of tonight is to dare. So I'm going to dare myself to, in fact, make that the topic of my TED Talk. And I'm going to dare you to give up on ambition and to not use your energy planning where you want to go with your life, and instead to follow your own passions and what you want to do, and to see where life takes you instead of trying to decide where you want to go in your life. And I think in doing so, you will not only be happier, but I think that if you use that energy, exploring the things that are interesting to you and that you want to do, you will be more prepared to succeed when things do happen to you and when opportunities arise and challenges arise. I think you'll be more likely to be successful. That's kind of a big, grand thesis, which is maybe kind of hard to argue, but I want to use some examples from my life to show you kind of what taking a pathless path can look like in your life. So I have some examples from my life that I want to show to kind of show you what this can look like in practice. But before I do that, I do have a caveat. I am a white American, English-speaking, cisgendered male, and with that comes a lot of privilege. And I'm sure that part of my journey in my life comes from that privilege. And a lot of that I'm aware of in kind of a general abstract way, but there's a couple of things that directly relate to what I've done that I want to point out just because I think it's worth saying. The first is, through no work of my own, I was born in the United States to American parents. And as a result, I have a US passport. And as somebody who's lived in different places around the world, having a US passport is a really nice advantage for that. Even though, again, I did nothing for that. And the other thing is, it's kind of part of that, both my parents speak English, and I'm a native speaker of English. And especially as a language teacher, I know the benefits of, natively picking up the most prestigious language in the world today. And again, I had no choice in that, it just happened to me. So there are some things that have played along in this, but with further ado, let's look at some things in my life and kind of see how this can go out in practice. So a lot of you are students. I don't know exactly how you chose to come to NYU Shanghai, but this is how I chose my university. I'm a twin. That's my twin brother right there. Actually, it's even kind of hard for me. I'm the one on the right, or your left. I'm from Kansas, and in Kansas, in general, there are two universities that people go to. People in my high school, at least. You go to the University of Kansas, or you go to Kansas State University. And my brother, one day he came home from school and he said, I'm going to go to Kansas State University, because he had a friend he wanted to be roommates with. So I was like, well, I guess I'm going to the other one. I'm going to go to the University of Kansas, because as a twin, I wanted to be independent. I wanted to get away from my brother. So that's what I did. And I went to the University of Kansas because my brother went to Kansas State University. And once I was there, like you will have to do, I had to pick a major. And my major was not teaching, it was not English, it was not applied linguistics. I ended up doing journalism. And the reason I did journalism was I liked telling stories. And early in the journalism program, they had a class where this professor got up and he told this really long, rambling story I don't really remember. There was a building and a dog, I believe. It's kind of this weird story. And then they showed this newspaper story, and it was somehow connected to that. And then another professor got up and was like, journalism is just telling stories. Some stories are like that story you just heard. Journalism stories follow a certain format. And I was like, well, I like telling stories, so I'm going to do that. Here is me doing journalism back in the day. I was really into newspaper journalism, print journalism. And although we'll see, it didn't really stick with me, I did very much enjoy what I did there. I enjoyed the work, I enjoyed the camaraderie, I enjoyed the pressure, and the kind of semi-professionalism that you get even though you're a college student. And I really enjoyed it, and I got a lot out of it. But as I said, I did not end up in journalism, and there's lots of reasons for that. One of them was, even though that was back in 2006, it was not a great time to be in journalism, even back then. But I did have another passion that I found out about in college. At the University of Kansas, like here, kind of, I guess, all students had to take a language. And I studied Italian, and the reason I studied Italian was I didn't want to take Spanish, like most people. I didn't want to take French, like the other people. So I took Italian, and through that I ended up studying abroad in Italy. And when I went to Italy, it was my first time leaving the country, and it just really spoke to me. I very much enjoyed the idea of living in foreign countries. And that's what I wanted to do. And how I ended up doing that was through the Peace Corps. The Peace Corps, if you don't know, it's an American government organization, and they send Americans all over the world to do 2 years of service in countries all over the world. The reason I wanted to do the Peace Corps was when I was a freshman, I had a scholarship, and as part of the scholarship, you had to go to different events, kind of like this. And one day, a friend of mine who was doing the same thing, he said, hey, there's one in our building right now tonight. Let's go, and we'll just get it out of the way. And it was a woman who was a Peace Corps volunteer who had come back, and she was telling her experience. The only thing I remember from her talk is that she was a vegetarian, but while she was in the Peace Corps, not only did she eat meat, she actually ended up eating an endangered animal. She had some sea manatee wherever she was. That's all I really remember. But 3 years later, I got something in the mail, and the Peace Corps had a recruitment event at the library, and I went to it, and some people talked, and there was a very nice woman, and I was kind of interested, so I talked to her, and she said, you should just apply. It's just 2 years. And I was very impressed with her kind of cavalier attitude, so I did, and 6 months later, I was in Madagascar. And for somebody like me that didn't have much experience in technical things, what I ended up doing was this, teaching English. Before this, I had never really taught before. It was just a way for me to get to do the Peace Corps, which was my way to live abroad. And a couple things about it. One, I had no experience, very little training. I had not that much support at the school. We had almost no supplies, and the classes were huge. This was actually one of the smaller classes that I had. I had classes of like 50 and 60 and even 70 students. And it was really challenging. It was a big thing, but it's a great way to start because ever since then it's just getting easier and easier and easier. And even though it was hard, and even though I'm sure that I struggled a lot, I really liked it. And that's kind of a special thing. I think of all the people that I did education with in Madagascar in our group, maybe only 2 or 3 of us are still teachers today. But I liked it, I really did. And I knew that it would give me an opportunity to keep doing this other thing that I liked, living in foreign countries. So I came home, and I was a substitute teacher, which is a very challenging job. It's been one of the hardest teaching I've ever done. And I saved up some money, and I took a teaching course, and I got what's called a TEFL certificate. And with that, I was able to get a job teaching in a university. I think one of the reasons, so I got a job teaching English, as she mentioned, at the Asian University for Women in Bangladesh. And it was a brand new university. It was kind of a fly-by-night operation, and it was in Bangladesh. And I think those things helped them hire me, again, somebody with not much experience. But I ended up teaching English there, very similar in some ways to what I do here. But for me, it's really hard to overstate how important this experience was for me, both as a teacher and as a person. Certainly as a teacher, I taught students like these 5 days a week for 10 months. And I taught 5 classes like this. So I got lots of teaching experience under my belt. I learned a lot of stuff. I failed at a lot of stuff. But I also figured out a lot of stuff. And I had the best students in the world. They were all women from all over South Asia and Southeast Asia. They were all on scholarship, and they just wanted to learn, and they were wonderful. And I don't think without them I could have done it, but I did. And one of the nice things about this TED Talk is that I was able to get in contact with some of them. And as a teacher, when your students leave, you often don't hear from them again. But even though it was over 10 years ago, I talked to a lot of them, and you see her right there, the first one, she's in the United States. She's a medical professional. The third one is also in the United States. And the one right here, she's from Bhutan, but she's now getting a PhD in Hong Kong. And she might be coming to mainland China for some research. So it was great to get back in touch with them. But also I had a little bit of experience under my belt, and that meant when opportunities came to me, I was ready to take them. And one thing they asked me to do is teach an elective in journalism. So I was going to teach a class that taught some basic stuff for some students who were interested in doing journalism. But then something happened. The university had a break-in, and someone came into the university, and they drugged some students and they robbed them. And from my experience, and with the help of the students, I said, we gotta cover this, we need to make a paper. So we got together, and we made this our first issue, and we ended up making 3 more papers, and again, I was ready for it because I had that passion from before. So I've given you some stories of kind of my pathless path, but these are all somewhat professional. And I wanted to give one more example from my personal life, because I think this style can be applied there. After my time in Bangladesh, I knew I wanted to keep teaching at universities, and to do that I had to get a graduate degree. And that led me to grad school in California, where I ended up meeting my wife. But again, the path there was not as direct as you might think. When I started school, I was certainly attracted to her, but she had a boyfriend, as this often happens. But in some ways, I think that was good for me because it meant I didn't have to worry about the threat of a potential romantic relationship. I could just be myself and not have to worry about that. But after a couple of semesters, I guess it was just too much, and we started dating, and things moved very fast. She broke up with her boyfriend in May. In June, she moved into my little apartment, which is smaller than my office upstairs. And then in July one night, we were going to sleep, falling asleep, and she said, out of the blue, out of nowhere, she said, this was in July 2012, she said, I don't want to get married in the year 2013. And my wife, she has kinesiology, she kind of associates numbers with feelings and colors. 13, I can get that. And then she said, and I don't want to get married in September either, not October. And her mom was born in November, she didn't want to do it then. And December is the holidays, right? And maybe you're doing, like I did then, you're kind of doing some mental math in your head, and she's like, she's asking me to get married next month, right? And I didn't say anything, which was not the right thing to do. I learned that later. But less than a week later, we were actually on a road trip to Kansas so she could meet my family, and we had time to talk. And I told her what I'm going to tell you now. And I told her that even though I was quite shocked that she had asked me to marry her next month, after we've only been dating for a little while, I had thought about it, and I knew that I couldn't imagine anyone else that I would rather be with. And if she wanted to get married next month, we could. And in August 2012, we eloped to Denver, Colorado. Here's a picture of it. It's not a great picture because there was no one there to take it. We had to set the camera on a bench, but we've been married for over 10 years now, which is a lot. So, and I'm just as happy as I was 10 years ago. It's been lovely. So there's some stories from my life that kind of show you what can happen if you let your life take you where it leads you. And my goal here is not to tell you how to live your life. I don't want to do that. But I do want to dare yourselves. I do want you to dare yourselves to think of your life not as a destination, not as something that you want to do, but as something, as a journey, right? And to let life take you where it takes you. And again, I think that you will be not only happier with that, possibly, but maybe even more successful in what you do. So thank you for checking out some of my pathless path, and best of luck to you in your futures. Thank you.